Today we're going to be answering a question that I got just a few days ago. It says this: I have friends who gave up Netflix for Lent. Should I give up something too? Also, while I see examples of fasting in the Bible, I can't seem to find anything regarding Lent. Okay, so while I can't tell you what you should give up or whether if you should give anything up at all during this season, I do want to address the question of what Lent really is. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief history lesson as to where Lent came from. And through that, maybe you could decide for yourself if you want to partake in it, and if so, what you want to give up. So let me start off by saying Lent is probably one of the oldest traditions in the Christian calendar. While it's really hard to pinpoint exactly when Lent started, there are some clues scattered throughout history that points us in the direction of when Lent probably started. There's a letter written by a guy by the name of Irenaeus of Lyons to the Pope at the time. His name was Pope Victor I. In this letter, this is what he said: the dispute is not only about the day, but also about the actual character of the fast. Some think that they ought to fast for 1 day, some for 2. Others for still more. Some make their day last 40 hours on end. Such variation in the observance did not originate in our own day, but very much earlier in the time of our forefathers. Now, while they didn't call it Lent back then, you could see that there was this argument back then where people were disagreeing as to how long Lent should last. Some people said, let's fast for a day, maybe 2. And others said, how about 40 hours? Now, where did that number come from? They believed that from the moment Jesus died on the cross to the moment he rose again was actually 40 hours. Also notice in the letter that Irenaeus says that this practice wasn't established by them, it was established by the forefathers, which are talking about the original apostles. So this implies that this practice was established in the first century church, even though they didn't record it in the Bible. But by the early 300s, there was this gathering of pastors called the Council of Nicaea, where it's recorded for us that they talked about Lent and how it was 40 days. So we don't know how in a matter of a couple centuries it went from 40 hours to 40 days. But what we do know is that it was widely accepted, that nobody raised an eyebrow thinking, whoa, wait, I thought you said it was 40 hours. Where did this 40 days thing come from? Now, here's something that's really interesting. Depending on where you're coming from, although the number 40 wasn't disputed after this, there was questions about how to count the 40 days. So, for example, in the Eastern Church, they counted the 40 days, but they didn't count the weekends. So you would fast from Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday, you could eat whatever you want, and then you go back right into the whole fasting thing. This meant that Lent lasted an extra week. So their Lent season either starts a little earlier or lasts a week longer. Now, in the Western Church, they observed it every day except on Sundays because they believed that Sunday was the Lord's Day. So that means that you would fast Monday through Saturday, and on Sunday, you could break your fast, and you'll get right back into your fast starting Monday. And this is the culture that was handed to us in America. So if you ever wondered why it's called 40 days of fasting, but if you count from Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent, to Easter, you notice that it's actually more than 40 days. That's because on Sundays, you're supposed to take Lent off. Now, at the time, there's a lot of Christians who observed Lent, but they were allowed to eat the last meal of the day, typically dinner. And depending on your tradition, you couldn't eat certain types of food. Like, for example, you couldn't eat protein like chicken, pork, beef, or fish. By the way, this is why we have Fat Tuesday. We call it Carnival, carne meaning meat. People just gouge on food, especially meat, on Tuesday because they're going to miss it so much for the next month and a half. But over time, some of these strict rules became more laxed. So like by the 800s, people were allowed to eat after 3 p.m. And by the 1400s, they were allowed to eat after lunchtime. Now, eventually, fish was brought back onto the menu. And this is probably why in today's world, if you go to a fast food restaurant during this season, you'll probably find a great promotion on fish sandwiches like the Filet-O-Fish. And in more recent days, in 1966, the Roman Catholic Church said you're only required to fast on the first day, which is Ash Wednesday, and on Good Friday, which is the last Friday of Lent. In the Protestant Church, there was a resurgence of the observance of Lent because of people like Bill Bright and Jerry Falwell, who thought that we as Christians need to have this tradition in our lives. So, a quick answer to this question is that Lent is a time to fast. Why do we fast? Because fasting leads to self-examination, and self-examination leads to repentance. So repentance is the goal here, and whatever it takes to get there is what Lent is. For some people, it takes 40 hours. Other people, it takes 40 days. For some people, giving up Netflix does the job, and for other people, giving up chocolate or coffee. You see, there was a time in Christian history where people forgot that Lent was really about repentance. So in the 500s, Pope Gregory I, he started this practice of taking ash and putting a cross on people's foreheads. In many cultures, putting ash on your head was a sign of repentance. So, should you give something up during Lent season? I highly recommend that you do. What should you give up? Give up something that's going to lead you to repentance. In some circles, they don't just give something up, they replace the thing they gave up with something that's good for them. So if you gave up watching TV during this season, replace it with a time of prayer. Do you love looking through social media? Well, if you want to give that up, why don't you replace that with Bible reading? You abstaining from certain things is supposed to lead us to repentance, which draws us closer to God. So whatever that is, that's between you and God. You don't have to tell me what it is. Just do it. Now, I hope this answers your question. But if you have more questions about this, feel free to email me, kotz@westlight.org. All right? Okay, take care.